he was communicating like God's about to take you through a mass exodus of who you thought you were up until this point. I feel like the last time I posted a video like this was like 2 years ago. There's definitely been a lot of life lived in between, so we're gonna have like a mini catch up, and then I have some things I want to like talk with you guys about. For those of us like going through like change and transition, I think that's been a really big thing for a lot of people this year. I know I don't know if I've experienced more change in my entire life in 1 year than I have this year. And so we'll talk about identity. We'll go into some Bible stuff, all the good things. So I got a lot of questions. I see you guys commenting and like, where have you been? What have you been doing? So the major things that have happened this year is I moved to LA. I sold everything, packed up my Bronco. At the time, my boyfriend flew out to Orlando with me and we drove cross country. All I had was like what I could fit in my car. I sold everything. Shortly before that, it was actually probably a year before, I heard the Lord tell me like, you're gonna be moving to LA, but I didn't think too much into it. I'm just like, okay, whatever. At the time it was like, I don't have the resources or the means to like make it to move over there. And also, why would I do that? Because it's like away from everything that I know. But little did I know I was actually already on my way there. So yeah, I moved to LA, sold everything I had. I published my third book. It's called Just Before Daybreak. I don't know if you guys can see it clear enough, but yeah, it's my third book called Just Before Daybreak. And anybody that's new here, hi. And my name's Deanna. Yeah, this is my second book. It's called Undignified. And then my first book, which is the most popular one, is Unraveled. I am really big on writing about very raw things. If you guys have been here long enough, you know I don't sugarcoat stuff, and I'm not afraid to, go to the dark places to be able to learn something of myself or see something of God and come back with a story. So this is definitely that. It's not available for audiobook yet. Right now it's only on Amazon and available through Shop Catalog. But it will be in stores, and my plan is to read it myself for an audiobook. I had someone message me who's like a mail carrier a couple of days ago, and she's like, I listened to all of your audiobooks, while I'm delivering mail. Is there any way that you can turn this one into an audiobook? So I'm working on it. It's a work in progress. But yeah, this book is really a story about someone who is living between yesterday and tomorrow. I think in the space of like identity and shift and change, especially the kind that comes all of a sudden. It really just talks about the strength and the bravery it takes to move forward, even if you're, crying, even if you miss what was, even if you can't see that there's more on the other side. So for anybody that's going through any kind of change, like any kind of change, moms whose kids have, moved out of the house, a teenager that's going off to college, leaving their home, someone who just went through divorce, someone that's just gone through physical injury or physical surgery that has impaired them in some way and life is different now. Like it hits on a lot of very raw things for the person who's living in the in-between. So yeah, I'll put a link here so you guys can shop the book and read it. I hope that you love it. Send me, leave a review or send me an email about how it touched you or anything that like stands out to you in the process of your reading. I've had some people email me already and they're like, I got through it in 3 days. And I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. But yeah, I would say it's easily my most vulnerable book that I've ever put out. In the process of writing it, I was so excited, like putting it together because I love telling stories. And then even the way that this book came to be is like a whole miracle. But I was like so excited, like putting everything together. And then time came for it to be like available for everyone. And I'm like, oh my God, what have I just done? I feel like I just exposed myself in a way, and I did. but all of the messages I'm getting from it are like people saying like, you put words to things that I didn't even know how to express, or just like really giving permission for people to be throughout change. So part of that is what we're going to talk about today. I think I'm going to do a series, and I've been thinking about this for a long time, called Killer Transitions. So we're going to start off with like episode 1 today. Don't hold me to it, because you guys know me. Sometimes I'll start on something and God's like, we're actually going this way. And I'm like, okay, that's the way that we're going. But yeah, that's a little bit of what I've been up to. So moved to LA, published my third book. And then I also got engaged, which is crazy. I'm literally looking at my ring right now. This is like my dream ring. And maybe I'll make another video at some point in time talking about like how we met and how that whole story unfolded. But it was definitely a God thing, and the odds that the two of us met at the timing that we met and the way that we met was nothing that like we did to make happen. So yeah, I'll share that story with you guys at a later date. But needless to say, between between those three things, there's been a lot of change. I mean, even going from like being a single-minded person to someone who is actively preparing for marriage is like, that's a transition in itself. If you're somebody that's like, if you've experienced a lot of stress this year, I say this lightly, one, because I'm like talking to myself, but also wanting to like give you some comfort. If you feel like you've been a little bit crazy or just off, or like acting like a psychopath, high key, that's totally fine. I'm just giving everyone permission who has experienced any kind of change. Like, you're not you right now, and you're not the you that you used to be, and you're learning who you are in new situations and new circumstances. So if you act a little crazy, or you act out, or you're a little more angry, or you're a little more tense, or a little more stressed, like, it's okay. It's actually part of the process. Me and my fiance were actually looking up the like top 20 life stressors a couple months ago, and I was going through the list, and this year alone, I think I hit almost all of them. And so I was sitting there, and I was like, oh, this makes sense why I've had so many like, intense moments, because there's been so much change in such a short amount of time. But I hope that this chat gives you some hope, and just allows you to rest a little bit. You're okay. We're okay. We're well on our way. Before we start, I want to pray, and then we'll get into it. I have a lot of notes. I don't know if we're going to get through all this, but we're going to try. All right. Dear Lord, I thank you for this time, and I thank you for bringing me to this place, through all the happy moments, through the tears, through the painful moments, through the releasing. I haven't understood all of it, and I haven't always been grateful for it in the midst of it, but I thank you for it in this moment. I pray that something that's said here would really give someone rest and peace in their heart for where they are today. I pray that it would give them the courage to go one more day, to give themselves another chance to see something of you. I pray that you would reveal yourself to them in only, in ways that only you know how. I pray that you would father and shepherd them as you already are, but make it known to them that you're with them, that you've seen it all. We're praying to the God who sees, and I just pray that you would help them to know that you've seen every moment, every tear, any betrayal, any pain, any shame or guilt, any moments where they've tried to move forward and actually taken steps back. You've been there with them, and you've seen it all. So I pray that you would just give them that insight and that revelation, and I pray that it would give rest to their souls. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Okay, so I think this conversation is really for the one who is crying and like crawling forward, but not because of what they see around them, because of what God has said. That's been the narrative for me a lot this year. Even in moments that have been so exciting. I think me moving to LA and publishing a book and getting engaged, like all of those are massively exciting moments that even when I say them, I smile, but that doesn't mean that they didn't come with like struggle. And so a lot of, if you're listening right now, this is kind of for the one who believes what God has said and is hoping in what God has said, but doesn't see what God has said. I've missed you all really deeply. I think you guys know me. I'm not one to just talk for no reason. If I don't have something to say, or if God hasn't like put something on my heart, I'm gonna be like, I'm out. And that's kind of been the case for the last year. I remember when I was like speaking more heavily online, there came a moment where I would sit down to like film something and nothing would come out. Like I would have so much on my heart and like so much to share, but like nothing would come out. And I realized that God was taking me through a place where it's like, this is not the time for you to speak. It's actually just the time for you to sit and listen. And I reflect back over the last year at least, and I'm like, there's no way I could have maintained doing stuff on social media and retaining all of the major life lessons that I was like walking through. It just wouldn't have been possible. So sometimes you have to take a step out of, spaces where you are in the spotlight to some degree to be able to move further, even, beyond where you are right now. I think I'm in a place right now where me and my fiance were talking about this yesterday. Like when it comes to change and transition, you're never really going to arrive. And I think that's for someone who thinks like I do, that could be a very daunting place because I'm extremely like goal oriented. So like I love tasks and I like to like mark things off. And I feel like if I'm just wandering, then nothing's happening. And that's not the reality of the situation. But even now looking back on this year and saying like, oh, this had to happen for this and this had to happen for that, I can still say I'm in a place where I'm like, I don't really know what's coming next. And I think I've gotten comfortable with just being like, I don't know, like, I'm not sure. I don't know. People talk about, what's your 5-year plan and what's your, plan for next year and all the things. And I think I am in a place, I think there's a time and a season for like planning and preparing. But I've noticed even this last year, everything I planned on my little board at the beginning of 2025, I was trying to go like this way and my life completely went this way. And so even in that sense, sometimes you get like, maybe I would call it like planning fatigue, where you don't even have the energy to plan things because you've experienced so much change that there's this almost blockage that's like, well, there's no point in planning because that's energy being spent in one way when I think I might be going in a completely different way. There's something to be said about that space where there's a positive thing about it because you're extremely present, and there's this sensitivity that you have to the Holy Spirit where if he says it's actually this way instead of this way, you're not so married to an idea that's in your mind that you can't pick up and go, and so for the person who feels like I can't plan because there's been so much change and I don't know what's coming next and how can I prepare for something that's unknown, I think God really just has you in a space where he wants you to be present. And if he's not 10 steps ahead and hasn't told you the entire future and the whole plan, maybe the richness of your today is your presence with him. And that will grant you space for the next day. And then you'll have more information for the next day and you'll continue in that way. I'm like actually talking to myself because I just had a conversation last night where I'm like fed up with certain things. So it's interesting that I'm saying this now and I'm speaking to myself. So over this year, I feel like the story of Ruth has been like, I've been prompted to read that so many different times this year. I don't know that there's any other story in the Bible like hers where you see so much transition in such a short amount of time. Obviously for the reader, it's like 4 chapters, right? And in some of the chapters, it will say like this happened over a 10-year span. And so for us, maybe her story seems like very quick, but for her, it actually, there was a lot of time in between where she went from like this to that. I'm not going to read the whole story right now, but I encourage you to read it. And the Holy Spirit definitely speaks through the stories of others. And so whatever stands out to you, don't take that lightly, you know, let it be something that anchors you. It's not that we read the Bible to like see ourselves, but we do read the Bible to see the character of God. And when we prompt him even with questions, he's able to speak to our now. There's no need to like replicate anyone's story in the Bible, because that's like, it's an old thing, to be honest. And God wants to do new things with us, but it can give us perspective into the God who really does see everything that we're going through. And so I encourage you to read that story. One of the things that stood out to me in the beginning, I think the first chapter is like, there was a famine in Judah. And so I think his name is Elimelech, don't quote me, but he takes his family all the way to Moab, which is where Ruth is. They're there for 10 years. A lot of death and terrible things happen. And then they come back to the Bethlehem, Judah area. And if you read it, it almost reads like there was a famine so that she could be retrieved. Like, it's almost like they went to go get her just to bring her back so that she could meet Boaz. And then obviously the story continues. But I thought that was a really powerful thing, in that like, we don't know what pieces of our transition are being used for our benefit. And I think this year, the challenge for me has been like really believing all things work together for your good. And I'm like, how can something so excruciating or something so painful be the thing that is like working for your good, you know? I'll give you like a little example. Before, when God told me I was moving to Orlando, or moving to LA, I was living in Orlando. My mentality wasn't like, okay, let me get ready and like move to LA, because I'm like, one, I don't know the time frame, and I don't know how I'm gonna get there, and I don't know why I'm going. So it's kind of just like information. And so I'm living my regular life in Orlando. My lease has ended in one apartment, and I'm planning to move like downtown Orlando in the cutest spot with like shops and restaurants. It's like single girl's like dream. The view was gorgeous. It was like overlooking this like lake area, rooftop pool. It was just beautiful. And so I am doing all the things to like secure this apartment, like running myself into the ground, running all the errands, making sure I have everything I need to like submit my application. I get a call back and they're like, you got the apartment. I was like so excited. And I remember going there that day and like looking at the apartment and like looking at the gym downstairs, because you guys know I'm a big fitness person. And I really was like seeing my life here. I'm like planning, I'm gonna do this here, and I can't wait to do this here, and I wanna invite girls over and like have a housewarming and like all the things. And so they take me up to view the actual apartment that I'm moving into. And there was one like defect. All of the doors in the apartment had this like bubbly film on them, and it looked like the doors had leprosy. And I'm like, this ain't gonna cut it. So we need to fix this. So in the contract that we signed, I signed everything, but I made sure to clarify like that it had been stated the doors are gonna be fixed, etc. I move in a week later, 2 weeks after that, a month after that, the doors still hadn't been fixed. At the time, I was doing some back and forth travel from LA to Orlando. So the time that I was in the apartment, I was running down to the leasing office like almost every day. Like, you guys said you were gonna fix the doors. Why aren't you fixing the doors? It was a very frustrating situation. I look back on it and I'm like, they're doors. Like, I had a place to sleep. What was I so dismantled about in a way? But I had an idea of how I wanted my place to look. I wouldn't even invite people over because, one, I hadn't like, furnished it properly, but also I didn't like how the doors looked. So anyways, I'm saying all this to say I had this vision of like where I was going. And I had traveled in that time so much between LA and Orlando that during March timeframe, I made the decision to move out here to LA. And obviously I had signed a 12-month lease. So my lease in Orlando actually wasn't supposed to end until this month. So I would have still been paying on it. And so the very thing that I was so frustrated by was the very thing that actually allowed me to get out of the lease because they didn't hold up their end of the commitment. And so I called them and I'm like, hey, I've planned to move to LA. You guys didn't hold up your end of the bargain. I'm just hoping that they're going to say like, sure, you can get out of the lease because we didn't keep up our end of the bargain. I thought it would be a little too good to be true, but I had made really great friends with the people down in the leasing office. And he's like, let me take a second, let me look out of it, and we'll get back to you. So I'm like, fingers crossed, like, God, let me out of this lease. And they call back the next day and they're like, we approved it. You know, we didn't fix what we said we were going to fix. So the apartment that you signed for actually wasn't in the condition that we agreed on in the beginning. And so I look at that, realizing God told me a year before that I was moving to LA. I decided to still move, stay in Orlando while I was transitioning to LA and didn't even realize it. And the very thing I was so upset about and bothered by and frustrated by was the very thing that allowed me to like break free of that old thing and move into the new thing. And so I look back at that example and I'm like, there's things even beyond what I experienced in Orlando that have been like frustrating moments. During a move, not everything goes perfectly, or you just might experience like hiccups, in some way. And that experience taught me like there could be things that are really frustrating. It's a silly example, but there could be things that are really frustrating right now in your transition. One, you might not know that you're transitioning. And two, the thing that you're so irritated by could be the very thing that actually grants you freedom of where you're going. And so, yeah, I wanted to share that story with you guys because it's interesting in a world where we hear so much about what you have to do as a believer. In that sequence of events, it was really all set up for me, there wasn't much I had to do. If those doors didn't have a defect or I didn't pick that apartment, I would still be paying rent in two places, which is crazy for anybody that lives in LA. LA rent is wild, and Orlando is pretty insane too. But I wouldn't have been able to get out of it, And so God had already formulated a path for me while I would be moving to a new place, while I was trying to stay in an old place. And the place that I was trying to stay in, the thing that frustrated me there was actually the thing that I was excited happened later because it granted me access to be able to move into the new thing. So I hope that encourages you in some way. Like, never take the things that bother you or irritate you as things that are here to like take you out, or life is just hard, or not understanding why you're going through it, because it could be that thing that actually is the key, to your own freedom. Anyways, back to Ruth. So some of my notes say her story required transition. It couldn't have played out for her good if she stayed in the same place. She was given a new husband, riches, land, a new life, and her bloodline birthed Jesus. None of that would have happened if she stayed where she was in Moab. It's almost like an exodus was required. The daunting thing about change and transition is that it's quite possible everything you've worked for up until this point won't continue with you further. 2 years ago, I remember God saying that to me, and I didn't fully understand it. It had to do with certain family members, and it had to do with friends, and it had to do with a relationship at the time. But he told me, he's like, where I'm taking you, they can't go. And when God says something like that to you, one, it's impossible for you to understand the trajectory of that because you're not in the future. But he's not saying that for no reason. In part, it's because you'll either release, you will either grow and develop so much through your change that you'll release friendships and jobs and, relationships on your own. Or they will do that by nature of you changing and things just falling off of you, falling away from you. I remember when he told me that, I couldn't see my life or myself beyond what I had right now. So I'm like, well, what does that even mean? We get so deep in planning our future that we really become married to this idea of who we are in a certain space. And when God says this is actually not who you are, and everything that's around you right now in a year will no longer be, it's like, I'm sorry, what? what are you actually talking about right now? And how does that happen? Because what does that look like? And it's a very scary thing. I imagine maybe not that God met with Ruth and said those things to her, but to some degree, for her to experience her own freedom, it literally required her leaving her family, her friends, everything she's ever known. Even the identity as a wife. I mean, she was married to Naomi's son initially. And so for you to leave a relationship because of death, I mean, that's a grieving process and that's loss. So that's its own transition. Then to move to a new space where the practices aren't the same, the beliefs aren't the same, the religious space is very different. The customs, the way of the land is very different. I'm literally experiencing so much of this right now. It's crazy. And then to meet somebody that was a part of her destiny, you can't think and be the old version of you when God is changing you. You literally can't. And that's some of what we're going to talk about today. But when you're leaving, I wrote, when you're leaving something and heading towards another thing, everything will feel unknown. You'll feel exposed like a tree with no leaves. There's nothing to hide behind here. There's no identity to escape into that will make you feel safe. Sometimes change only requires your observation. I feel like I've said this to myself many times this year. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? There's been so many moments where I'm like met with a situation and I feel like I need to do something here. And God is like, you actually just need to observe yourself, observe my hand, talk to me about what's unknown, ask questions, but there's nothing immediate action-wise that like needs to be done. Circumstances come to you only for you to see that there might be another way to experience this. I remember, what was it, probably like a year, or maybe like January, I started noticing myself in similar spaces and what I used to get from that space or the validation I received. It just, there were rooms, so to speak, spaces where I didn't feel like me anymore. There'll be places that you go to where you used to like get so much and it used to feed you so much in a certain way. And then you go to that space and it's like, you start to see things that maybe aren't okay with it, or things that like, I've been here this whole time and I never saw that, or this never bothered me, or I never questioned that, or how come this isn't bothering anyone else, or like, is anyone else seeing this? Am I the only one like that is recognizing what's kind of happening here? Just thinking back to so many moments I've had in that space, but that's like an indicator that you're outgrowing a place. You're also outgrowing yourself in a place, and it's the world around you. It's one of those ways that God speaks to you, and he's almost preparing you, like you are about to go through from this to that, and you might be in between the from this to that for a while. And there's nothing to fear here, but if you're feeling those like symptoms, or what I call, of the killer transition like happening, is because you're starting to notice like I am not me in this space anymore. Something from the deep, I feel like it's the Holy Spirit, is calling you like out of a place. And sometimes that's really hard. It can be a church environment that you used to like really learn about God in. I remember I had a home church in near Orlando that I used to go to. And when I first went, it was everything to me. I'm like, how have I gone this long and it didn't exist? And I was there for 2.5 years, almost 3 years. And then I realized that I was being like called out of it. And I was telling God, like, I'm not ready to leave this place yet. Like, I still have so much to learn. But you don't recognize, like, sometimes God will call you out of something because you've gathered all that you can get from this place. Like, there's nothing else to learn. There's nothing else to see here. You might not recognize that you've hit your ceiling or that you've reached your limit while God's like pulling you further. But he's saying to you, like, the space that you were in, this is all you were supposed to get here. Like, you were the one that was passing through. You weren't here to build a home. You were just here to like pitch your tent, so to speak. I want to read this really quick. That just caught my eye. When you begin to stop and question if there's another way in regards to your location, friend group, relationships, fear, anger, envy, patience, defending yourself, self-sabotage, this is when doing nothing teaches you what the other way looks like. You'll know you're transitioning when you have a pause to notice what's happening and a moment to ask yourself, what's really going on here? It's the noticing initially that prompts your own curiosity for like what's going on. If you look back over the last few years, you were in a space and you weren't thinking about, why does this place not feel like home anymore? Why is it starting to feel different? You were just there. You were just absorbing. You're very present, and that's what you needed to do, and that's what I needed to do and be in that time. But when there's that subtle pause, it could be like seconds, it could be a minute, it could be the entire time you're like in an environment, and you're just like, what's really going on here? I don't feel like myself here anymore. This doesn't feed me in a way that it used to, or I used to feel like this environment, maybe it's a social group with friends, like this was okay. And you're like listening to the way that people talk and you're like, I don't know if I agree with that anymore. I don't know if I see things that way anymore. Or what's wrong with me that I'm irritated, frustrated, bothered by this space that I used to love, that I used to like look forward to. That's also like an inclination that like God is telling you, like, you're not about to be here anymore, or you're not about to be here in the way that you think that you are, or the way that you have been anymore. I wrote down, change requires God's eyes, not our own. That's been my prayer for this year. I want to see things through his eyes and not my past experience. The question I wrote down was, what was required of Ruth to end up in her own blessing? And really, when you read that story, you see like it's not to glorify her, because at some point in time, I want to talk to all these Bible characters and be like, was this really how it was for you? Or like, do people glorify your story? Because I feel like when God does his thing in my life, I don't look back on moments and be like, and feel like I knew what was happening the whole time. Literally 99% of the time, I'm just like, I'm either crying, I'm upset, I'm confused, I'm curious. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. And then after the fact, I'm like, oh, that's what was happening. So anyways, I say that to say, like, I think Ruth's story is like, it's easy to say it took this and it took that and she focused on this. And it's like, she probably had no idea what was going on. Like the whole time, she probably had no idea what was actually happening until things happen. And then you're able to look back and see like, wow, I had to go through this and experience this, or I would have never been here if I wasn't curious. And so I wrote a willingness to see herself different from anything she had built before and outside of anything she was born into. And I think that's a twofold thing. When it comes to like major change in life, it does. And one thing I think God has kind of shown me this year, my only role in all of this transition has been curiosity. If he says something about me, if he's prompting me a certain way, if he's saying, you actually don't respond that way, this is trauma, or I want to show you a new way, or this is actually what you like. You think you like this, but it's because of domestication and societal norms, but it's actually not that. And I want to give you a new career path. So the only thing that is required of us is curiosity to see ourselves in a different way that we know ourselves to be today. My pastor a year ago prophesied over me, and he said, he either said, in your 32nd year of life, you will become unrecognizable to yourself. And at first I was like jumping for joy. I'm like, oh, bet, like I'm about to be doing this, I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be doing that. And then I lived out my 32nd year of life. And when I just turned 33 in October, I am a way that I would have never thought I would be. There's moments where I meet situations and I respond as this person I am today, not as the person before. There's things that I allow and that I have more grace for and more patience for. There are people and things in my life that like the old me would have been like, absolutely, I will never do this and I will never do that. And I'm doing the very things I said I would never do. And so what that statement that he made, like you'll become unrecognizable to yourself, was a very real thing. I didn't recognize that even in him saying that, he was communicating like God's about to take you through a mass exodus of who you thought you were up until this point. And that's a very scary thing. And it's one thing to experience like one change, while everything else is still the same. But when God really tugs you out of where you've been, one, you're in a space of like no man's land for a long time, and you're like, who am I here, and what do I like, and I don't really want to respond from a place of trauma anymore. So how do I respond? What does the Deanna of today do with this situation? And a lot of times you don't know because you haven't been here before. But that is, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it's a scary thing, but it's a very positive thing, because in many ways God is freeing you from this person that you've created. So many times this year, God would say to me, the rules that you've lived by don't apply to you anymore. And there's a kingdom perspective on that. And then there's also like a everyday perspective on that, because we are not from here. Obviously, we're believers and we were sent here, by God. And so from that aspect alone, the rules of the earth don't apply to us. So when he tells you to leave this and let go of this, and this actually doesn't matter, and I've said this, and it extremely contradicts the world we live in, he's also communicating to you the rules that you think that you live by don't apply to you. You're not from here, so you don't have to operate based off of the rules that are the systems, I'll say that. The systems that have been set in place here. And then the other side of that is that we have, as a people, governed our own lives, by inner vows, by our trauma, through family, the way we were raised. We have this list of laws that we live by, and we didn't even recognize we're living by them. And so when he says the rules that you live by actually don't apply to you, what does that mean? That means that you actually don't have to function under the systems of your family, under the systems of society, under the systems of your trauma, under the systems of your childhood. And right, all that sounds good on paper. It's like, okay, sure, I don't have to be in bondage to these things, or I don't have to function under them. But what it requires of you to not function under those things is a literal death of self. Like the person that has been birthed in this space, when God meets you and says, like, you don't have to live by these rules, that means that there is another way. What that requires of you is a complete denial of everything you've built, all these rules. I have to do this because they're family, or I have to be here because this is how our family does it, or this is the job that I'm in, so I have to do it that way. And he's like, you actually don't. What it requires from you to not live under that is your curiosity. Nothing more, nothing less, because he's going to do the rest. He'll guide you like step by step. But it does require you to be like, okay, so what does that look like? It will challenge every safety mechanism, every defense you've put around yourself, every protective, what's the word? I can't think of the word. Protective mechanism? That's not what I'm trying to say. That's not the word. But you get what I'm saying. It will literally take a complete destroying of every like safety you've put in place around you, for you to like go outside the walls, so to speak, and see like what, if I don't have to live a certain way, God's telling me that, not just from a heavenly perspective or a spiritual perspective, but also from the rules that I've created for myself, then who am I outside of these systems and the rules and beliefs? I wrote down, whenever you enter transition, you're being given the opportunity to create a new life. And with new life comes new possibilities. You're being handed the gift of freedom. In that space, when you hear that in church, you're about to be free and God's going to do a new thing. And I've learned over this year when God wants to do a new thing, you're not always going to be like celebrating and smiling and excited about it. It can actually be extremely painful. It could be fairly devastating because it takes a complete restructuring of your mind. And for a lot of us, our mind has become a safe space for us because of what we built in our mind, the way we see reality. Psychologically, it really will challenge you, and that's not a comfortable thing. And so sometimes when I hear pastors and teachers like, doing this message about like God's gonna do a new thing, and you're gonna do this and you're gonna be that, and it's like, yeah, I am, but recognize what comes with that. And God will be with you every step of the way, but it's not an easy process. So if you've experienced that this year, there's a comfort in it because your freedom, you're actively involved in your own freedom. But sometimes it's not always something to celebrate about. Sometimes that means leaving a 20-year marriage. I had somebody read my book the other day, and I was blown away by the response, because there were things in the book that she had already been prompted by God that confirmed where he was even taking her required her to leave the thing that she had been in for 20 years. That is like, that's not an easy thing, It's actually a very difficult thing. Sometimes your own freedom requires your death, in a sense, your death of identity. What I've learned in this place is that transition isn't my life forever. The things I experience here isn't my life forever. Although I will always be transitioning, this period of life is something I'm just passing through. So over time, as those old skins shed and God begins to fill in the blank of who you actually are, outside of the trauma and outside of the rules and outside of regulations that you set for yourself, it will become easier because you'll be showing up as the person that he sees, as the person that he created, and that is a very free person. At the same time, that freedom that you're literally like drudging through, fighting to get to, it will cause disruption. I was watching the Moses documentary on Netflix, and one of the people speaking said like, what it takes to get free is not what it takes to stay free. So freedom is not this, it is a gift, but it's not just handed to you like on a silver platter. Like, you're going to have to fight, and there's going to be struggle, and you'll experience mourning and celebration at the same time, grief for and loss for who you no longer are, and an excitement for what's to come in the middle of feeling like a giant question mark. And that is not for the weak-minded. It's not for the people. It's not an easy thing to do. It's very brave and it's very courageous. And so sometimes you'll feel like a coward, or you'll feel so insecure, or you'll have the least self-confidence. I remember one time like going through a period of transition, and I was so confident in myself in a way. And I told God, I'm like, I am tired of not having that girl mentality, you know what I mean? And the Holy Spirit was like, you had a that girl mentality, but that girl, the confidence that you had in that girl was actually built on so many shaky foundations. It wasn't true confidence. And so I would actually rather have you in a space where you feel insecure while I'm rebuilding you, because your confidence will be in something that is more sure. One, it will be in me, but two, it will also be in the person that I see, the person that I've created. And so if you are feeling like a giant question mark in life, and you don't feel as confident, or you're feeling like insecure, and you're like, who am I in this space? You're just walking to your own freedom. That's really what's happening. But I don't say that lightly. It really is a death. It's a loss. You will mourn through it, you will grieve through it, but it's a major life stressor. The list that I was telling you guys about earlier, it was like the top 20 like major life stressors. One of them was like loss or death. Sometimes you only think about that when it comes to family members or friends. But we don't think about that when it comes to self. When you are changing, or God's calling you to a new place that literally requires the old you to no longer exist, that is a death, and it's a loss, and there's a lot of stress and anxiety that can come with that. And so you're not crazy, essentially, is what I think is what I'm getting at. You're not crazy, and you're not alone. The first thing that I kind of noticed myself experience in transition was a struggle, right? I wrote, this is the fight or flight part of you that holds on to what you've known up until this point. You fight the new person God is creating, and flight, you run back to the old ways. What's happening to you is that you're learning how to stop fighting, because there is nothing to fight here. In a way, you are your own enemy. It's not the devil. It's you and me. It's a very interesting feeling to play the hero and the villain in your own story, where the hero, the you, that is pulling you forward, that's saying like one more day, or that's having hope, that feels courageous, that believes in something you can't see. And then the villain is the person, you're like split in half. They're the person that's saying like, no, stay here, it's safer here. We don't know what's there, but we know it's here. And it's a constant battle. Every day you wake up and you're faced with situations that where that hero and that villain will resurface, and you have the option or the choice to side with the hero or side with the villain. And sometimes you'll do both. It's never just linear. It's literally never linear. For a time, you'll fight to hold on to beliefs, domestications, identity, whether that's family, work, social. Every day you'll experience challenges, and you'll ask yourself why life feels so hard. It's not that it's hard, it's that the challenges are here to push you towards another way. So long as you fight to keep the old you, you'll become exhausted in a place you were only meant to receive in. Oof, that's a bar. Right now, that receiving is information, and then information becomes revelation, and revelation becomes transition. I wrote down, every day you'll see yourself facing challenges. You'll say, what did I do to deserve this? You could experience depression or deep sadness. You'll notice you're more tired than you've ever been in life, and life will feel like it's beating you down constantly. This is a good thing. It's beating out the old versions of you. And again, I think all of that is like, sometimes when you hear these people like, online talking about change and transition and like always taking the higher road, like ideally that is some frou-frou cool stuff. I almost said a different word. That's some cool stuff, right? But then when you live it, it's a very different reality, because you're faced with the raw truth or version of truth, the honesty. You're faced with yourself. You're constantly faced with yourself. And sometimes you won't even know that you're fighting internally. You'll just feel like there's so many challenges coming to you. Where I noticed over this year, there would be days where I would talk to God and I'm like, I just have a break, because I just had to have one day where I'm not faced with something, and a lot of times it would be things that were external, that were like brought to me. And I wouldn't want to deal with it. I'm like, I'm just trying to be in my bubble of peace. But what I didn't recognize was like that challenge was was forcing me to confront me. Will I look at this and ask God what to do with it? The new version of me that he's creating is constantly and daily saying like, God, I see this situation, but I kind of want to see it through your eyes, because I don't want to be reactive, and I don't want to move in it based off of what I can see. Even that prayer alone is giving God space to show you another way. So it's less about the challenges, the constant challenges you're facing, and more about God literally handing you an opportunity and saying like, here, this is a space, one, to see me, to ask for my eyes, but also to see something new of yourself. Maybe you don't have to respond in this way anymore. Maybe he's confronting a fear of yours, and you're recognizing the thing that I was so afraid of experiencing is now here, and I'm not afraid of it anymore. I can either, the hero in me can rise up and choose another way, or I can let the villain in me allow the fear to make me cower back and choose the things that I've chosen in the past. So really it's it's opportunity. And again, that sounds colorful and pretty on paper, but while you're living it, it is exhausting. There have been days where I just didn't even want to get out of bed because I'm like, I'm tired of dealing with stuff. I'm tired of having to face myself every single day and then choose something different where I just want to show up as I am. Sometimes in that space too, and I say this because I've experienced it, you'll start to not accept you. You're never going to, in the place of transition, you're not always going to choose the right thing because you don't always know what to choose here, right? You're learning every day that you have a new opportunity to create a different life or a different outcome. When you look at the situation in your hands, you might see one option. And then the new version of you that's emerging will ask God, like, okay, this is what's happening, but can you actually show me what's happening? And because he gives you his eyes, you'll see 10 possible outcomes. And then you're able to create new life in that. So you'll constantly feel like you're taking steps backwards because of the exhaustion. And that's the fight, the struggle that's happening inside you, this new person versus this old person. But what I did learn is like, accept the stage that I'm at, even if I don't know who I am, even if I don't know what I would do, even if I have shame because of what I decided in this new space with all this gray matter, and I'm trying to figure myself out here, and I don't want to run back to old ways, but I still didn't choose the right thing in this new place. Like, give yourself grace. I wanted to title this chat like, you're graced for change, meaning that like in the space of adaptation, God has given you a grace. There's a grace over your life for change, whether that's leaving a relationship, whether it's stepping out on faith and leaving a job and not having something lined up. There's no level of perfection that's expected of you here. Like, God has literally set aside a very specific grace over your life for this change that's required of you. He understands it's not easy. There's no expectation to get it right every time. So there's no shame to carry in feeling like I should have arrived, or I should know better, or I should, because you actually don't know what you should do today. You're learning as you're emerging as this new person, what this person does here in this new place. And so, acceptance is a big thing. Accepting yourself as the question mark. Does that make sense? Like, accepting, I am going through change of identity. I'm not who I used to be. I don't quite know who I am yet, but I accept this person today who is changing. Even if I don't know how to label her, I don't know how to understand her, or if I don't know what she will do, it's all just, you're just learning, but you have grace for this place. I wrote down, part of your exhaustion right now is that you're mourning or grieving and becoming a new creation at the same time. And that requires a great deal of energy. So if you've been tired this year, physically, mentally, internally exhausted, there's a major battle for your life literally happening, You'll start to follow what God is saying, and it causes disruptions in your atmosphere. He'll tell you to do something that completely contradicts your belief and the belief of those around you. The Spirit of God within you causes people to become uncomfortable. When this happens, it is information to you. God is showing you who cannot go with you into the next phase of life. Or he is showing you where to place them. That's very important, because it's not always that you have to get rid of people and you have to release them, but you'll start to learn like where to place things, whether it's the importance of a job or your mother's perspective on your life or the family dynamic. You'll know, okay, certain rules don't apply to me as I'm changing and as I'm emerging into this new person. And it's not that those things, I can't be involved in them anymore, but you'll start to learn like where to place them. And that might just be an order of priority, There are voices that you don't even know you're a slave to that will encourage you to go in the opposite direction that God is saying walk in. It could be your mother, your father, your best friend since birth. It could even be your husband. God's purpose for your life is to know him without needing to see his face before you see his face, so that when you do see his face, he will not be a surprise to you. He will be easily recognizable. Anything that comes to challenge his purpose, he will remove. That's really big. You'll notice you'll be the one holding on to what he is trying to remove. It sucks and it hurts, and you'll wonder why he will let you go through this. But it is in his goodness that he allows you to experience this deep pain. He is freeing you from what doesn't apply to you. You are from heaven, so there are governing laws that apply to you there that he wants to bring to earth through you. That won't happen if you're married to a belief that doesn't apply to you. What he says to you will contradict what you believed up until this point. What has worked for you in the past will no longer work in the same way as before. That was a big thing for me. I remember over this last year, God saying to me, like, sometimes the feeling, right, is when you're having faith and you're moving forward, you're believing in the word of God. The faith thing is a interesting thing. Even I've learned so much about that word this year. But when you're believing in what God has said, right, sometimes in order for you to move forward, you have to trust in what you've seen him do in the past. But even what you've seen him do in the past doesn't apply to this place anymore. Even things with my book, I remember right before it released, God told me, like, what I did with the first one is going to be totally different than what I did with this one, so don't apply the same formula. It's crazy when he says he's coming to do a new thing, he actually means that. And so you have to use the examples of him from the past and apply them to the future, knowing he's not going to do the same thing. And that's a very interesting space to be. More so, you're relying on his character, not on what he did, if that makes sense. And I think I'm kind of realizing that myself as I'm saying it out loud. It's not this like intense focus on the exact way that he did it, because in that way we're building a formula and we're expecting the same thing in the future. But that if he said he showed up and he did it in the past, then he'll do it here. It just might be in a way that I won't recognize. There's an arrival point that you get to when you relinquish this struggle, the fight in you. That's like the old versus the new, right? The arrival point is getting to a place of observation, not feeling like, okay, I don't do this anymore and I'm not this person anymore, so who am I here? That still is like the energy is, I need to do something here. And really, for me, my own arrival point has been observation. I wrote down, what you'll notice is this statement. When you get to an arrival point, I don't have to choose what I have done before. I can choose another way. Even if you don't know your destination, you'll be sure to come across something beautiful along the way. When you begin asking about where you are in life, you're right on time. Try not to get so focused on needing answers. The fact that you're asking questions now speaks volumes, and that is the answer. The fact that you are in a space where you're asking questions is communicating the answer. Like, it's telling you you're changing, you're in transition. There's nothing to be done here. If you're in a space where you're able to ask a question, that means you are also in a place to receive an answer, right? If you don't even ever ask the question, sometimes you're not even in a place to receive an answer. So the answers you're looking for are in the questions that you're asking, right? I would always ask God, like, what do I do in this place? And sometimes God only requires your curiosity, nothing more or less, not perfection, not discernment, not praying, not fasting, but a willingness to see something different. It's not until you're fed up with the fight that you can step into the next phase, which is release. And this comes through curiosity. In all this unknown, recognize the God who sees all is with you. He's watched the struggle. He's seen the tears. He's witnessed the moments where you could have run back to old ways, but you didn't, and it about killed you. I've been there multiple times. Genuinely, and maybe that's the meditation, for this time, is like sit with the fact that you speak to the God who sees you. You're not misunderstood, even if you're misunderstood to yourself. Psalms 139 is a big one that I've been reflecting on. It's like this intimate knowledge that God has of you, even when you don't know yourself, or when you don't understand why you're functioning like this, or is it connected to trauma, or there's been moments even this year where I'll do something and I'm like, I don't even want to do that. Why did I do that? Why did I do it that way? Or it's caused an outcome, or it's caused shame. And then I'll just be like, God understands me. And there's some peace in that, there's rest in recognizing not even a therapist understands you and can dissect you to the degree that God can. And I don't know, I found comfort in like, I might not understand me and I might not know what the heck is going on, but God does. And I don't know, there's like relief in that. Who is calling me right now? I don't know who this is. Sorry. I made this tea and didn't drink any of it this whole time. Your grace for change. It means you have room, plenty of space to be exactly as you are in this day. You've never been here before. God has given you space to adapt. He is in no rush, and his blessings are not on a clock. He has set everything aside for you. Wait, let me go back. He has set everything aside for now, so you have time to become under his careful eye. There's nowhere else you can be but here, and your life story requires this part. There have been moments over this year where I was like asking God for a thing. Later in the year, I realized if he had given me that, I would have been so overwhelmed by my own transition that I wouldn't have even been able to enjoy that blessing or like the thing that I wanted to see and experience. And so even though it was frustrating to like go through the year and not get the things that I really wanted, I recognize on the end of it, I'm like, there's no way I would have been able to maintain that because of the fight within me. We don't give enough credit to the energy it takes to recognize something and to create change. You ever see those videos online where it's like your brain is actually creating change? It is one of the coolest things to watch, but I'm like, I'm wondering what the physical exhaustion or what that change in your brain does to your body. It really is like an evolution of self, and that is a very exhausting thing. Even for a mother to conceive and birth something, there's like, there's back pains and there's exhaustion and there's irritability and there's stress and there's frustration. There's great moments, sure, but then comes time to birth that new thing. And for me, even as a mother, I look back on when I had Kai and I don't remember the pain of it. I remember feeling tired and my feet being swollen and not being able to sleep on my stomach, or him kicking me in the middle of the night, waking up every 2 hours when he was still in my belly. But then I remember having him and like just holding this like pure, innocent, beautiful thing in my hands. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was literally all worth everything. And I think God is going to give me that moment again with myself. And he's going to give you that moment again with yourself to where you'll look back and see like this year sucked. Like not just sucked, but it was devastating and it was difficult and it was excruciatingly painful. And I was really alone and nobody understood my process. And I'm trying to like be joyful and work and, create a family, all in the meantime, write a book. You'll have this like, you'll have this gratitude for like what is going to be birthed. And I think it will be you in a sense, if that makes sense. Like what God is birthing by releasing the old you is for you is going to be something so pure and something so innocent and something new, not covered in trauma, not wrapped in inner vows, not blinded by family systems and societal systems. Like, it really, the new thing that he's creating is actually you, you know? And so that requires a mass exodus, and it will exhaust you, and it will break you, and it will defeat you. But I've already seen small glimpses of looking back on the last 2 years and saying, if I would have never been curious, or just even believed in God, exhausting my hope, or having days where I'm like, I'm not hoping anything because all of this is a sham and I'm tired and I don't really care anymore, but still choosing to step forward. It's like I literally would not be here. I wouldn't have had the moments that I've had this year. Being engaged, traveling to Portugal, releasing a new book. Like, if I had stayed in the old Diana who knew what she knew in Orlando, I wouldn't have experienced my own blessings. And so the moments are coming for you where everything that it's taken to get to your own level of freedom, like, you will be able to enjoy. And all that was required of you up until this point, this killer change, this transition, you'll see that God gave you plenty of time. He's graced you for the adaptation through change. Like, there's no expectation here. It's just observation. And you will get to dance, you know, from your own hard work. And see the benefit of your willingness to be curious. I've noticed this one thing with God, and I'll be finished after this, is like, what he can do with someone's curiosity is like, sometimes even it's not about faith or belief. Sometimes it's just like, if he said this, and I believe what he said, and I believe that he cannot lie, what does that look like? Just as one question can literally alter your entire life. It can pivot your life. It can place you in a completely different trajectory. And all of it is from like a curiosity. And so maybe that's all that's required of you at this point, is to relinquish this fight of the old versus you, and needing to understand and trying to get it right, and carrying the shame for your own change that you're graced for. But just sitting and observing and asking a question. God, this sucks, and I don't like how it looks through my eyes, but can I borrow yours for a second? I've said that so many times this year. Like, can I just see through your eyes for a second, and like, you show me what's really going on here, because I'm going to be discouraged and I'm going to run back at every turn if I keep looking through my own experience, and it's actually not what I want anymore. You'll know that you are really in the middle of transition, or really well on your way, when you get fed up with you, the you that you've created up until this point. I'm tired of being mad all the time. I'm tired of being angry all the time. I'm tired of being reactive all the time. I'm tired of seeing a situation like this. I'm tired of living in fear. I'm tired of having anxiety. I'm tired of being depressed. Like, what is it that I want out of my life? And sometimes even that question will lead you to another possibility. So I hope that all of this encourages you, and that you recognize you're not alone. You're not crazy. You're just going through a very intense metamorphosis. And you have time. You have time, and you have the energy to get through. And you'll see on the opposite end of this that this place it had to be. There's no escaping it. There's nowhere else you can be but here. And it is absolutely necessary for your process, for your journey, for the way that you'll see God, for the way that you'll know him, for the confidence that you'll have in yourself. It has to happen. It has to. Anyways, I love you guys. I'm going to sign off because I need tea at this point, and I'm going to go rest. I don't know when I'll upload the next episode, but I think I'll do like a 4, maybe 5-part series just on change. Read the story of Ruth when you have time, and really recognize that you speak to the God who sees all, and ask for his eyes. That is directly in line with his purpose for you, is to see things as he does. It draws you closer to him. So his answer to that request is already yes. And then give him time. Every challenge you face in these upcoming days is not here to take you out. It's here to literally show you you can be a different way here. The way you think you have to respond to fear, to a challenge, to anxiety is not, the rules you've lived up to and to this point don't apply to you any longer. And you're free to express a new way, to find a new way, to see a new way. All right, I love you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Take a deep breath, just breathe. I'm right there with you. I don't know what's in store for next year, but everything that you've worked through this year is not wasted. Not a second of it is wasted. And you'll see that. All right, I love you.